Good morning, good afternoon, and welcome to another CPC Strategy hosted webinar. If this is your first time with us, welcome, and we do hope to see more of you at future events. If this is not your first time, welcome back, and we're happy to have you here again for another CPC Strategy webinar. So, retargeting. All of us here realize this advertising strategy is extremely effective, especially since it is dedicated towards the bottom of the funnel. You know, right when a customer is truly considering making a purchase, or maybe they already have made a purchase. So as a brand or as a retailer, it's all about getting that conversion, that return on your ad spend. Which brings us to today's topic: winning your Amazon customers back with ASIN level retargeting. So in this webinar, our speakers will walk you through how ASIN level retargeting actually works while breaking down the Amazon Media Group. So before we start, I will briefly introduce CPC Strategy for those of you that are a bit unfamiliar with us. We are a retail-focused paid search management company, and we focus specifically in the realms of Google Shopping, paid search, as I mentioned, like Bing and Google, as well as Amazon sales acceleration, creative, and content optimization. And lastly, we do Facebook performance marketing as well. So we were founded in 2007. We have over 500 active retail clients, ranging from CPG to apparel to even services. So we work full funnel with brands at the prospecting level, as well as more bottom of the funnel, like today's topic, for example. So I would like to introduce myself. I'm Analicia. I'm CPC Strategy's webinar coordinator, and I'll be moderating today's webinar as well as handling all your questions on the back end. So before we begin the presentation, I would like to discuss a few of the logistics of the webinar. So number one question we always get asked: session, recording, and slides. Will you receive them? And the answer is yes. Rest assured that we will be sending out the session recording and slides to you all within 48 hours. Secondly, want to point out, as I mentioned, I will be handling the questions in the back end. So on the panel, you should see a tab that says questions. Feel free to submit any questions you have for the speakers there, and I'll be sure to add it to the queue. As well as if you're facing any technical difficulties, feel free to chat me through that questions tab as well. We also do have handouts. We do have additional resources relevant to today's topic, relevant to Amazon. So those are available for you all to download in that handouts tab. Lastly, we do ask that you join us on a couple of poll questions. So we're going to have one now and one towards the end of the presentation. So I'll launch the first one right now. And what we're asking here is, are you currently investing through Amazon Advertising Platform, also known as AAP? So I'm sure a lot of you know this is a display side of Amazon's advertising. So, you know, the answers are yes, as well as AMS, which is the more search advertising on Amazon. Another answer, no, you're just focusing on AMS right now. Third answer, not advertising on Amazon just yet. And fourth, what even is AAP? And if you don't know, no worries, we're definitely going to go over all the Amazon ecosystem in just a few slides. So as these responses start coming in, I'll be sure to close it in a bit. I'm going to go reveal the results now because I know our speakers are probably waiting anxiously for the results, and I'll share them with the audience as well. So 26% of the audience is investing in AAP as well as AMS. So that's great to know. Then we have 44 just on AMS right now, 13 not advertising on Amazon just yet, and 17, what is AAP? So to those, yes, advertising on both. We hope we can provide further insights on how to expand your ad strategy. And for those of you that are not, you know, let us walk you through AAP and all the capabilities of that platform. So we know the acronyms get confusing, and we'll be sure to, you know, go over those in just a few slides. But now I would like to introduce our speakers to you all today. We have Brenda Insixingme, one of our star marketplace channel analysts, and we have Pat Petriello, our head of marketplace strategy. If you've tuned into an Amazon webinar here, I'm sure you've heard Pat give a few great pointers along the way. So Brenda and Pat, if you'd like to introduce yourselves to our audience.
Hi everyone, as Annalisa just mentioned, my name is Brenda Insixingme, and I am a marketplace channel analyst here at CPC. I'm very excited to be a part of today's webinar and also looking forward to going through ASIN retargeting with everyone.
Thanks, Brenda. This is Pat Petriello. As Annalisa mentioned, I head up marketplace strategy here at CPC Strategy. Used to be a former professional seller myself on the marketplace. Also worked up at Amazon in their seller services division up in Seattle. So have interacted with the marketplace through a number of different mediums along the years. And I can tell you, really excited to talk about the content that we're talking about today. So thank you to everybody who spent the time out of your day to join us. Thank you to everybody who answered that poll question as well. That really helps set the stage of who our audience is today. And just to set in mind, this is the first in what will be a series of webinars where we will unpack all things about AAP, AMG, retargeting, the other different targeting segmentation that's available within AAP as well. So this really does, to me, begin a new chapter in terms of what's capable through Amazon display advertising. And it's something we've been wanting to talk about for quite a while, and we're really excited to get a chance to do so today. So in order to set the stage a little bit about what we'll be talking about and set expectations about where this journey will go, we'll break down AMG, Amazon Media Group, draw that distinction between AMG and AAP, the Amazon advertising platform. As Annalicia mentioned, there's often confusion and misnomers around what these different acronyms mean, which is what, where do they fit. So we'll unpack that a little bit as well. The meat and potatoes of this is how ASIN retargeting works. That's what's really exciting. ASIN retargeting is what allows you to drive incremental sales for your business, and that's the whole point. So we'll absolutely unpack that a little bit as well, and some qualifications around what does a segment need in order to qualify for retargeting. And Brenda, I'm glad you're with me here today to unlock some of these things and talk about them as well. So I think the most logical place to start and to set the stage, and I think it was some 17% of you hadn't heard of AAP, so let's start at the top and explain a little bit about how this structure works. And Brenda, I'll set the stage here, and then maybe if you can dive in a little bit, is just to take a look at the Amazon Media Group landscape. And so if you think AMG is the people, AMG is the actual organization within Amazon that's responsible for all of the advertising units there. Many of you are already familiar with AMS, Amazon Marketing Services, your product display ads, your sponsored products, your headline search ads. And we've been talking about those for a long time. We'll continue to do so. AAP is the Amazon advertising platform, and we'll get into this a little bit later in the presentation as well, but that breaks down into ESS, which of course now you're at acronym fatigue for sure, which is Enterprise Self-Service Platform, and then there's an Amazon Managed Service. Now, Brenda, I know one of the things that you and I had talked about in the run-up here is the difference in the way this cost structure works. Is that right?
Yes, definitely. Thanks, Pat. So now we kind of understand the hierarchy of the platforms and kind of what types of campaigns exist between the two. Another key thing to also understand, it can be distinguished actually by the way that it accrues spend. So you'll notice under the AMS section here on the left-hand side, these campaigns and these ads perform at the pay per click level, which means we only pay for the clicks that we generated. So obviously not having to worry about paying for any clicks that we didn't get. On the other hand, everything under the AAP side, these platforms perform at the CPM level, which means we pay per every 1,000 impressions.
Yeah, that's a great point. And one of the things to note, and I know we'll talk about this later on as well, is that this is not an either or scenario. These two units work better together. And that's actually a very important part to understand for any of you folks who are thinking about how to get the most out of AAP. So Definitely. We'll talk about that a little bit more as well.
Definitely. So another thing to note, search and display advertising, you'll often hear these two platforms actually being referred to as search and display ads. Where search is referring to AMS ads are sponsored products, headline search ad, product display, and display is referring to AAP. So here on the screen, you can see we've broken down some of the key differences between search and display advertising, but ultimately a search ad is where we're showing a customer an advertisement based on the searches and keywords they've entered. On the other hand, with the display advertising, we're going to show them an advertisement based on what our technology believes the customer would be interested in, and also based on their behavioral trends.
Yeah, that's a good point, and a few things to call out here, and we may have even been guilty of this in our blog and other content in the past, is that when you think of display advertising, you're commonly thinking of display only as top of funnel, only as brand awareness, only is hydrating the top of the funnel that then gets captured into search at the bottom of the funnel. And that's true to a large extent. However, and we'll talk about this when we show the funnel here on the next slide, is that display advertising is full funnel when it comes to AAP, because if you think of retargeting and how it works, it really is the most qualified potential customers you can have. They're visiting the detail page, which to me is the equivalent of being in the store and holding your product and actually intimately interacting with it and learning about it. So that's one thing. Another thing to note here, and Brenda called out technology, and one of the things about AAP and display advertising through Amazon that's really important, but also really exciting, is that it's programmatic advertising, which sounds like classic marketing buzzwords. Oh, this is programmatic, it's machine learning, and it is. But why that it actually matters is that it helps automate the decision-making process of media buying, which means that as you're running advertising, as you're accruing spend, as you're building targeting, as those ads are running, it's also refining. It's getting better. And so over time, your advertising will actually get better based on where your customer performance is. So with that in mind, yeah, go ahead, Alicia. Yeah.
We're just getting a couple of questions from Jason and Fernando here that I just want to clarify. So AMS and AAP, are they available to both vendors and sellers?
Are AMS and AAP available to both? Well, that's actually an interesting and tricky question. So AAP, yes, available to either sellers or vendors, irrespective, it doesn't matter as long as they can support the budget. AMS, the answer to this question changed in the last 6 months. So there used to be essentially a workaround where 3P sellers could access AMS using Vendor Express. I'm getting a little bit into the weeds now. That was closed down a few months ago. So 3P sellers can still advertise through Seller Central. They have the ad units in there. They just don't have product display ads in Seller Central. If it's a hybrid approach where you're operating both a Seller Central account as a 3P, a Vendor Central account as a 1P, then you're accessing both. But you can even read, and there's been news about this too, how Amazon's goal is to get to advertising product parity, where everybody's going to be using the same thing. I mean, that's nothing I've heard from Amazon. That's just what the news seems to indicate. But long answer to your short question. Hopefully that helps.
Thank you. It does. Thank you, Pat.
Awesome. So thank you for that. And I know I mentioned the funnel a moment ago and where AAP fits in that funnel. Brenda, maybe you could break that down a bit more.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Pat. So definitely just continuing to elaborate on the differences here between search and display. As Pat alluded to, we can definitely discover that they do appear in different areas of the advertising funnel. So I'm sure a good majority of you guys listening in today have seen this advertising funnel once before, are fairly familiar with it. But I just want to start off by just breaking down each part of the funnel. So first, starting at the top with awareness. So this is when the customer becomes aware of your product. That can be either through online, on the radio, or even TV. So they're now aware that your product is available to them. The next thing we have underneath that is going to be consideration. So at this point, the customer's interest has peaked. They're now considering purchasing the product. Purchase intent is when we begin to move a little further down the funnel, and the customer is now becoming more engaged with the advertisements and the product. Purchase experience, this is everything about the product. So we're talking about the product detail page, images, reviews. They're now forming an opinion and an experience with the purchase. And last but certainly not least, we have purchased. A customer has now converted and purchased the product. So for search advertisements, this would be definitely bottom of the funnel. If you think about it, the customers are on Amazon, they're typing something into the search bar with the intent to purchase. Now with AAP, like Pat just mentioned, they are considered full funnel. The advertising does have the ability to reach customers at different areas of the funnel, but for the most part, it is more upper funnel advertising, which means it's meant to build product awareness and reach potential customers. Today specifically, we are talking about ASIN retargeting, which you'll see here on the screen as highlighted more towards the bottom of the funnel. At this point, a customer has discovered your product and has actually been on your listings or your product listings detail page, but then has decided not to convert and left the detail page and not purchase. With ASIN retargeting, this is about as bottom of the funnel as you can get. Wouldn't you say that too, Pat?
Absolutely. And again, just to reiterate from a moment ago, if you think about what how somebody gets included into that ASIN retargeting pool. It's they have to visit a product detail page on Amazon and then not have purchased that. So think of even how successful you are to get a potential shopper on Amazon onto your detail page. They've either had to search and find you organically, or found you through an AMS ad, or maybe you've done other branding exercises that has caused that shopper to search for your brand specifically. And one of the things I want to call out here, again, setting the stage that this is just one webinar, which will cover a series of the different functionality that AAP holds within it. And our focus today will be on ASIN retargeting. So there are other behavioral targeting segments available through AAP, lifestyle segments, in-market segments. There's other factors which go into strategizing and using those as well, and you can use those in conjunction with retargeting. Where we're starting today is primarily a focus on ASIN retargeting and how that can help your business. So just keep that in mind. And Brenda, maybe we could talk about, hey, it's great to learn about all this stuff. It's interesting. Why does it matter?
Definitely. So I'm sure you guys are wondering the same exact question. What kind of impact can you expect to see? What is the power of AEP and what makes it so powerful? Well, AEP uses the data collected about customers in real time, like Pat mentioned, with programmatic advertising. And when you think about the platform it's on, which is Amazon, it's been able to accrue so much data due to the fact that millions of people are visiting and shopping on the website. We're talking about 182 million monthly visitors just in the US, hundreds of millions of products sold, with more than 100 million products sold on Prime Day alone. And then, of course, billions of shoppers' behaviors captured. So in the grand scheme of things, AAP recognizes what you're thinking about buying, what you're actually buying, and even things you've decided not to buy. In addition, they also know if you're prone to read reviews. Are you an avid review reader? If you're looking for low-priced items and you are a continuous coupon clipper. This makes the AAP platform equipped with so much information, and it ultimately makes them extremely powerful for an advertiser.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really interesting what you brought up there about how it has a knowledge not only of what people are searching for, buying, detail pages they visit, segments that they typically shop in, what their buying behavior might say about them from a segmentation standpoint. It also is able to determine what type of content and message actually resonates with that given buyer. So I think you said you're a review reader, right? Aren't you the person who is? Yeah, you read a lot of reviews.
I love reading reviews.
Okay, so that's really cool because I know we'll talk about the dynamic functionality of how those ads show up a little bit later on. So we'll get to see that as well. And really thinking about this, when we think about the power of AAP, nobody has to sit here and convince you that Amazon is a world-class demand capture engine. We're already seeing that happen. We're already seeing half to more than half of shoppers who are doing their intent and their purchase intent journey on Amazon. So the demand capture component is there. What some of this display is, and maybe less so retargeting, but AAP and the power of display is hydrating the top of that funnel and really using display to then generate demand, which you're then capturing through AMS. And I think one of the key hooks here is really understanding that tie-in between AMS and AAP and how they do work better together.
Definitely. Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, so far we've discussed, what AMS and what AEP both entail separately and what kind of distinguishes them and what their differences are. But Pat just mentioned, AMS and AEP actually work better together. So we want to break that down just a little bit. The reason is because like Pat just mentioned, you do fuel the top of the advertising funnel through the display ads. So for instance, a customer is searching for a water bottle on Amazon, but then they decide they're just not ready and they leave the website. Now Amazon knows they're in the market for a water bottle and will actually begin to show them ads on other websites. And that's going to help build up brand awareness. Now let's say a few days later, that same person goes back onto Amazon and searches for a water bottle again. But this time they actually see your sponsored product listing, and they instantly recognize the brand after seeing your display ads off Amazon. So now they're more familiar with your product, they're more familiar with your brand, which in turn it makes them more prone to actually click on your ad. Essentially, having both AMS and AEP campaigns running at the same time will likely increase brand searches, which in turn will increase impressions, ranking, and other sources of earned media.
Absolutely, and I think that's a really critical component here. So I just want to slow down and really go through what that example that Brenda just outlined might look like. And I'm going to use a Hydro Flask water bottle because I happen to have one right here in front of me. You should always drink during your webinars. It's a pro tip there so you don't get choked up. So let's say, for example, your Hydro Flask, who's not a client of CPC's, by the way, they're just a water bottle sitting on my desk. So let's say that they're doing top of the funnel display advertising. They want more people to search for the Hydro Flask brand. They want more people to search for water bottles in general, but they don't have AMS, a rich network of AMS advertising and search demand capture built beneath that. Then somebody saw that ad on, maybe they're on, the weatherchannel.com or CNN.com or ESPN.com, whatever it might be, see that ad, say, oh, that's great. They come back later, they search Amazon, but Hydro Flask is now not protecting their brand through branded AMS advertising. Maybe Nalgene, another water bottle company, is bidding on Hydro Flask's brand name. Worst case scenario for Hydro Flask, they're now paying to drive traffic from off of Amazon back to Amazon so that traffic and that demand can then be captured by Hydro Flask's competitor, Nalgene. It's funding your competitors, which is clearly not a great strategy. And that's why it's so important, and even directionally, not to view these as, should I use AMS or should I use AAP? They are really on the same continuum. AAP, I would just make an argument, is maybe a little bit further up that line. So you'd want to have, the bad analogy I use is a colander or a strainer. If you pour water into that strainer, not a lot of the water is going to stay in that strainer. It's going to flow out because you have nothing beneath it to capture it. That's running AAP with no AMS. If you have a rich concrete network of AMS built beneath product display ads, headline search ads, sponsored products, all that's dialed in and driven by technology. Now you have a full bowl. You pour water into that bowl, you're going to capture all that. You're going to retain all of that. You'll see that in the efficiency of your spend, both in AAP and in AMS. Awesome. So set the stage a little bit around how is Amazon defining AMG versus AAP? Why is AAP so powerful? Why should you use it together with AMS? But really what we want to narrow our focus on today is ASIN retargeting. And just a note, because this can be confusing, is in the last couple weeks or a couple of months, you may have received a note from an email from Amazon, or you may have seen if you're in AMS just in Seller Central, that your sponsored products, there's a program running for automatic sponsored products that allows you to do essentially ASIN, a form of ASIN retargeting through your automatic sponsored product campaigns. Just note that even though that same word retargeting or remarketing is being used, what we're talking about today is a separate program. And we're specifically talking about ASIN retargeting through AAP. And AAP allows for a bit more advanced, granular, fine-tuned control, things such as budget pacing, granular targeting, audience segmentation. And so just to set the stage of what we're talking about, that does exist. We acknowledge it exists, but it's a little bit different. And just good to set expectations as we go into this section as well. But I think how it works is really a great place to start.
Definitely. So we've gone through a lot of information so far, really just kind of gathering a basic understanding of how AMS and AAP work cohesively. But I'm sure you guys are all asking, how does ASIN retargeting work? That's why we came on the webinar today. That's what we're going to talk about. So a great place to start. So first, just to break it down, the customer visits your product detail page on Amazon. But instead of purchasing the product, they leave the page for whatever reason. Next, your AAP display ads are going to follow that customer by being shown to them off of Amazon. Once the customer clicks on your AAP ad off of Amazon, they are going to be directed back to that product detail page for the product that's being promoted. So overall, that's kind of just the step-by-step process, but there are obviously different ways that a customer can still purchase or find your product. So for example, Pat, what if, let's say, a customer sees your AAP ad on an off Amazon website, but instead of clicking on it, they then decide just to go search for it themselves?
Yeah, that's a good question. And it's one of the hopes, it's one of the intents that they either express that demand through clicking on the retargeted ad itself, or Brenda, like you just mentioned, they express that demand maybe later on and they come back and they search for it. So what will happen in that case is that, and especially from a reporting standpoint, AAP won't take credit for attribution if somebody came back, searched, and then clicked on, let's say, your sponsored products ad, because it'll be last click attribution in that case. However, if somebody did see that AAP ad, came back to Amazon, searched, and then found the product organically, AAP would get credit for that, essentially, because no other ad unit had been clicked or seen clicked rather downstream of seeing that. So that's one of the good things, really, is that from an attribution standpoint, you're not going to get any double counting. One of the things I wanted to call out here, and you can kind of see this represented on the screen as well, and what I find super cool about this when I nerd out on it, is that this follows you across platforms too. So if you do a search on your phone and you go to a product detail page and you look at a product and you don't end up buying it, maybe later when you're on your desktop or you're on your tablet, that's still part of your login experience, where Amazon follows you no matter what device you're using and will still serve those. So it's really a great way to basically to continue to message those consumers regardless of what device they're interacting with Amazon through.
Perfect. So earlier we mentioned that, like Pat mentioned, I'm a huge review reader, and that's some really valuable knowledge that Amazon is able to obtain. So we kind of want to break that down and how that is able to affect the way that we're retargeting these customers. So we're going to walk through the different formats. We understand now how it works. Now we want to show you what exactly they look like. Now the most common and highly recommended format for an ASIN retargeting ad is actually a dynamic e-commerce ad. So with a dynamic e-commerce ad, Amazon's algorithm is able to determine which type of ad your customer is actually more inclined to view and click. So for example, you can see at the top right corner, there are 4 different types of ad types, all catered to a specific customer. So like I just mentioned, for someone like myself who loves to read reviews, really relies on feedback from other past customers, it's probably going to show me that format there at the top left with the star rating in a recent customer's review. Now, let's say Pat is a huge low price, looking for the most competitive price point.
Guilty as charged.
And so for him, it might actually show him the format right underneath it with the $7 off coupon. So all in all, Amazon is able to recognize and actually train their models to predict the customer's behavior based on data they've gathered, and actually will leverage that into how they're going to retarget your customers and what type of ads they're going to retarget them with.
My understanding also is that for the reviews, Amazon sets a threshold as well, so that I believe you need to have at least 3.5 star review. And I don't remember the exact number, but I want to say it's 15 reviews, which sort of makes sense, because a common question might be, if this is a newer product or maybe it's not reviewed so well right now, do I run the risk of Amazon actually showcasing something that isn't the most impressive part of the product? And that's one of the great things about this, is if those minimum thresholds aren't reached, then that won't surface. And I know another question that we'll get often, especially for brands that have a really robust brand style guide, is do they have to use these dynamic e-commerce ads, or are they able to build out their own custom ad units if they have that creative?
That's a great question. Yeah, they actually do have the option. As I mentioned, this is one of the options. It is highly recommended because we're able to gather so much data and we understand what the customers are more inclined to click on, but they do have the opportunity to go through and actually create their own ads if they do have a specific style guide or format that they want to follow.
That's great. What that really means is it allows flexibility based on the assets you have available or the assets you can create. But also the dynamic e-commerce ads, from our experience, it's allowed advertisers to get up and running really quickly.
Yeah, it's a lot faster and a lot more seamless for them, for sure.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So let's talk a little bit about a few different types of ASIN retargeting, because really we're only talking about a couple that are on the screen right now specifically. And one of them is pixel-based remarketing. So we'll go quickly here. Pixel-based remarketing is a little bit different than the product retargeting or product remarketing that you see here in the second box. Pixel-based retargeting is if you're putting a pixel on your website. So let's say I am Nike.com, the shoe manufacturer. I'm sure you've heard of them. And somebody visits my product detail page on Nike. They look at my pair of shoes, they look at the sizes and colors, but they don't purchase. but I pixeled that shopper, which basically means now they're in my remarketing pool. And remarketing in general, to any of you who are attending, maybe you've been doing Google remarketing for years. This in a nutshell isn't necessarily new. It's just new from an Amazon standpoint. But you could then follow that shopper around wherever they are navigating on the web, and you can remarket them, and you can send that traffic back to your product detail page on Nike.com. But you also have the option of sending that traffic back to Amazon.com if your product also exists there. Again, this goes back to choice, options, and advertiser goals. If you're agnostic as a brand manufacturer where that transaction takes place, then maybe you want to send that traffic back to Amazon because you're going to look at average conversion rates on your e-commerce site, which typically are lower than those conversion rates that you're seeing on Amazon. From a customer standpoint, I'm a Prime member. Any opportunity I have to make a Prime purchase where I don't have to put in credit card information again, I don't have to create a new user login, I don't have to do any of those things, creates a more frictionless transaction. It makes it a little bit more seamless. So that's pixel-based remarketing. We're not going to dive too deep into this webinar, but we just want to be clear about there's so much in this about what we are talking about and what's related, but not exactly what we're uncovering here. Product remarketing is really more rich to what we have just been discussing now. Somebody visits your product detail page on Amazon, then they go off Amazon, they're navigating the web, they get retargeted and pushed back to Amazon. There's some other levers that are involved there as well, some other targeting levers. So for example, there's frequency caps to make sure that you're not hitting people 100 times a day if you don't want to. Brand halo remarketing or retargeting. In this context, I'm using remarketing and retargeting as the same essentially, and that's retargeting shoppers who viewed other products of your brand. That especially is useful. Let's say you have a catalog of 30,000 ASINs and you're thinking to yourself, well, if I'm going to build a retargeting campaign for each one of those ASINs, that's a lot. That's going to take a lot just to execute. But maybe you want to say, if anybody has seen any of this group of ASINs or any subset of ASINs that you select for retargeting, that you want to follow those people around, and then maybe you want to drive them back to your brand store or to some of your best-selling products, things like that. Similar product remarketing, as you might imagine, allows you to reach shoppers that are looking at products similar to yours. A common question we get here is it just other similar products that you have, or is it of other brands? You can do both. Some advertisers we've seen have chosen to use an exclusions segment on their own products and purpose this almost like a conquesting type of retargeting, where you're just wanting to, if I'm Nike, I just want to see people who looked at, Puma and Adidas and Reebok and Under Armour shoes and remarket to them. So you can't pick by brand. You can't say, I specifically want to go after Adidas, but you can do it by product type. Brenda, is there anything else you wanted to add to that?
I think that sums it up.
Awesome. So I know there's some qualifiers for retargeting as well. And it's great because we just got some news. We had to update the slide, I think in the last 12 hours actually.
Yes.
Is that you need a large enough and a rich enough pool of potential shoppers who visited the page and didn't buy to create a retargeting segment. Basically, there needs to be enough people for you to go try to reach afterwards. That number had been 5,000. You needed at least 5,000 visitors who viewed the product rather, but didn't purchase. That has recently been reduced to 2,000, which essentially provides for more flexibility in terms of segment creation because you don't have to reach quite a high a threshold as you used to. So that is applicable for product remarketing, retargeting, and brand halo retargeting. For similar product retargeting, this is looking at users who viewed A and they also viewed B, or they bought X, but they also bought Y. And those are for those related or those complementary products. And as I mentioned previously, you have the option of including your own products. So if you want to try to keep people in your brand pen, so to speak, if they saw one of your products, you can show them another one, but you could also use exclusion segments to keep that out. If you're just looking to market to people who viewed similar products to what you have, but from a competitor brand. And so that's been very powerful as well. Brenda, have you had any experience with that?
Yes, I definitely, like Pat mentioned, we just had to update the session threshold yesterday, so that's brand new information. But something else that I wanted to mention specifically around product and brand halo remarketing, if you don't have a single ASIN that reaches 2,000 sessions in 30 days, and that is the look back time is 30 days, you can actually have the option of including multiple ASINs that then equal the 2,000 number. So it doesn't have to be just one specific ASIN. I do want to put that out there. We do have a few clients that are doing both strategies, so you're not limited to just one. And if you don't have the 2,000 threshold and you're not able to participate, that's definitely not the case here.
That's a great point. And if you're trying to wrap your head around is there something analogous to similar product retargeting that exists in AMS, sort of think of it like extended targeting through product display ads. It's not exactly the same, but it works in a similar fashion. So those are the different types of retargeting, and what we're mostly talking about. We're not really talking about pixels here. We're to some extent talking about the similar products, but it's really the product and the brand halo, retargeting. And of course, one of the questions is, okay, I've heard you guys mention weather.com, I've heard you mention CNN.com, I've heard you mention ESPN.com. Where the heck do these things show up is a common question we get, and it fits into a number of buckets. Obviously, one is on the mothership, Amazon.com itself, the Amazon app as well for mobile users, Amazon owned and operated sites, of which there are a number of them. I know IMDb is a big one that we see. So Zappos is another one. There's a number of Amazon owned and operated properties, which are essentially vehicles for that ad space. There's also the open exchanges. And so you can see here on the right, and they might not mean anything just the way that they're set up, but Amazon operates open exchanges. So if you are ESPN.com, you're not selling individual ad units on your site to hundreds and thousands of different advertisers, because that just doesn't scale. What you do is you essentially make your inventory available to an ad exchange, and some of you are going, yeah, I already know how all this works, is that you submit your inventory to an open exchange, and then advertisers can bid for those placements. So that's how that works. One of the questions we often get, especially when you're thinking about your brand equity and what your brand means to people, is can you exclude certain websites? And you can see we took a screenshot of the targeting option at the bottom. You can, and then to make reference back to how this is different from the sponsored product automatic targeting retargeting option that you may have seen, this is not available through that. So just drawing a little bit of a distinction as well between those two. So you do get some granular control here around where your ads show up. And of course, that's the wonderful thing about the machine learning and the programmatic aspect of it. It will learn where do your ad units perform the best, where are they getting seen the most and interacted with the most. And then that's where, from a strategic standpoint, it makes sense to have an expert practitioner who's shifting budgets and targeting more granularly in those areas.
Perfect. So we've gotten through a lot of key aspects so far regarding ASIN retargeting. We've talked about how does it work, what does it look like, where does it show up. The next question, I'm sure, is how exactly does one access this platform? When it comes to AAP campaigns, there are actually two different options. You can see it here in that chart on the left-hand side. You can either work directly with Amazon through their Amazon Managed Service, or you can choose to work through the Enterprise Self-Service, also known as ESS. With ESS, you're able to work with agencies just like us here at CPC Strategy, where we manage every aspect of your AAP campaigns, provide metrics, performance emails, and hop on phone calls as well.
Absolutely, and that's what's interesting. This is one of the few topics we've ever talked about, I think, at CPC since I've been doing these webinars, which is longer than I'd like to admit, is this isn't something that you can necessarily go, this is great, and then log into your account and start running it. And to be honest with you, and if you know anything about the way we do things here, we're not even advocating for one or another. Both of these options are great. Amazon Managed Services are fantastic. Using Enterprise Self-Service through an agency that has access to that is great. The takeaway here is that AAP gives you such an opportunity to reach more shoppers and turn those shoppers into buyers by combining that top of the funnel, that display, with your bottom of the funnel, right? Don't use a colander, use a full bowl, and use those in conjunction. So whichever of these options you decide to go with, just get them on your radar. Consider them. Consider that AAP could be useful for your business. One of the benefits we've seen too about having everything in one house, under one house, is saying, okay, running your AMS and looking at AAP advertising at the same time is, like we mentioned a few times, they're not siloed. They inform one another. They inform one another in terms of keywords and who your customers are, and ASINs which perform well and ASINs which have high conversion rates, and all of those different factors which are useful components that you'll need to dissect, consume, and work through in terms of making the smart targeting decisions to make all this stuff work together, which is the point. So we'd be remiss if we went through all this and didn't talk a little bit about Amazon's fun acronyms and just a little bit of the glossary. And I don't know, this is maybe 10% of the AAP glossary. We just picked some of our favorite ones. But the point here too is that some of these metrics may not be normal or part of your everyday metrics that you're looking at your Amazon business. I guarantee you that they will be. And to get these a little bit on the map, and Brenda, I know you dive into this stuff all the time. What are some of the ones on here that maybe the people viewing should pay most attention to?
Definitely. A good majority of these terms, I'm sure you guys are familiar with. There's definitely a few that are unique and specific to AAP, the platform. So I do want to call out a few. So for example, delivery rate. So this is going to be the rate at which the order or the line item is spending money relative to its budget and date range. Another one would be CPM, which is again total cost per 1,000 impressions, which is how we are able to generate and accrue spend within AAP campaigns. Cumulative reach is a new one. This is number of unique users the ad is exposed to. And then lastly, ROAS. I know you guys are probably more familiar with maybe ACOS or ACOS through Seller Central and AMS. It's pretty equivalent to that, but in AAP terms, we go by ROAS, which is going to be product sales over total cost. So those are just a few. There's obviously a lot more than that, and you're also able to see a lot more in terms of metrics, but those are just kind of a few that we use as references with our clients to discuss and interpret performance.
Absolutely. And of course, the ROAS ACOS relationship is just inverted. So if you have a 20% ACOS, you're getting to a 5-to-1 ROAS. And so it's pretty easy to make those conversions. There's even a glossary of the glossary when I was listening to Brenda speak there a minute ago, because even order and line item are somewhat new in the way of terminology. So if you're used to having campaigns and ad groups, basically starting kind of from the most granular component, there's a creative that you can build within a line item. That creative is basically the ad group. Mm-hmm. The line item is basically the campaign, and the order is essentially the account. And Brenda's giving me the thumbs up right now because I have done that in both different directions, and so wanted to make sure we get those right. But even words such as order or line item, you might ask, how are my line items doing? How many line items do I have for a given order? What creative is running within a given line item? These are all a little bit new in the Amazon lexicon, but things that are really important. So that's what we want to introduce to you today. So that's the bulk of really what we want you to take away with is, what the heck is this stuff? You can read a lot of things out there, but there's almost myths, if there's confusion around what's the difference between AMG and AAP, how are they different? Is it AMS or AAP? Wrong question. It's both. They can be used together. Another thing that we didn't address as well, but I would just recommend, is people think of AAP often in campaigns. Oh, you run it for a month, you run it for 3 months. We're in the early phases of testing and have seen some really good success around an always on AAP approach. Basically, if you're getting a proper return for your retargeting, I don't see any reason why you'd stop doing that. Same with sponsored products. You don't run sponsored products for a month and then turn it off. So those are some of the key areas, but I can almost hear Annalicia's ears burning with the number of questions that are hitting her chat right now. So Annalicia, I'll pass it back over to you.
You are right in assuming that, I will say. But thank you, Brenda and Pat, for going over, all of AMG and all of what really is ASIN level retargeting. So, just a final recap to all of our attendees, kind of what we went over today. So they broke down the Amazon Media Group ecosystem, the difference between AMS and AAP, which I know all those acronyms are confusing, where ESS lies and where ASIN level retargeting lies. So, also as well as the reach of the Amazon advertising platform and all the ad exchanges that are out there, and really, it's also shocking to see where all those display ads can go. We usually assume, sometimes here also, we forget that there's a display side of things when it comes to Amazon, and we think, it's just headline search ads and all those search ads, but sponsored products, but there's much more that Amazon has to offer. So, also deep diving into how ASIN level retargeting actually works, and the qualifications that it takes for ASIN level retargeting, and how as an advertiser, you can, jump in and start doing all these different types of advertising. So I will take this time to launch our second poll. In this presentation, we did go over the Amazon Media Group and everything else I just mentioned, basically the 101. Let me get this poll question up here and launch it for you all. So, Amazon is known to be more of a demand generation platform, as I said, but it actually can work more as a demand capture as well, such as with AAP and retargeting, as we just went over. So it's key to point out, like Brenda and Pat did touch on, that you do always want to make sure that your AMS is in order before you do invest in your AAP, because in reality, it does work better together. As Pat was saying, that analogy with the colander, you want to make sure that you're pouring your clients, your customers into a bowl, not into a colander, and letting them all, go their separate ways. You want to win them back. So if you would like to go over more advanced strategies, if you would like to know what it's like to, have access to enterprise self-service and actually do want to retarget, feel free to let us know. I have this poll up. It's just so you all have the opportunity to reach out to us, to let us know if you want us to reach out to you and set up an expert evaluation. So yeah, if you would like to schedule an Amazon strategy evaluation, let us know what you're focusing on, and we'll be sure to reach out to you after this. If you're not interested right now, you're not ready to talk, no worries, definitely fine. We're here to kind of teach you all Amazon has to offer. So now we'll get into the Q&A. I know that I asked you one in the beginning, and there was some that you clarified along the way without me even asking, but now I will get to it. And I'll keep this poll in progress. I'll keep it in session. I won't share your answers with our audience. Rest assured that it'll be kept internal, but I'll take it over to the Q&A now. So one question we got was from Chris in respect to the retargeting. So his question was, do you have to own the buy box for the product that you're running a retargeting ad for? Like, for example, he says with sponsored products. Or can you still do retargeting? Will Amazon still let you do so if you don't have the buy box?
Yeah, good question from Chris. And so the answer is that these ads will run agnostic of who owns the buy box in that given moment. So it is not the way that sponsored products work, where those ads will only surface for you if, and they're only eligible if you have the buy box for that moment. Another good thing for Chris to know that's related to that is that's how reporting will report too. It'll be in total sales. So if you're driving traffic back, and let's say you're a brand manufacturer, let's say you're a vendor, and a third-party seller is getting some of those sales, you'll see total sales irrespective of who the buy box winner was. And for some, that's frustrating because maybe they only want to get the sales themselves. For other brands, they don't care who the end seller is as long as they're moving more of their product.
Got it. And then another question that he asked was, will they still count the sale if it doesn't take you to the product detail page? That's a
really great question. Yeah, Pat, he slightly mentioned it earlier in the presentation, but if the person sees the AAP ad and then goes back to Amazon and locates them organically, then that would be a view through attribution, and the AMG or AAP ad would get that credit. Obviously, if they then click on their sponsored product ad or a headline search ad, then that attribution would go to that AMS campaign.
Yep, exactly. It's that last click attribution too. So like you said, or like Brenda said, if somebody clicks on an ad, then the ad will get credit. And Amazon, which we really like, they won't give double attribution, try to inflate the numbers.
Got it. Okay, great. Hopefully we answered your two questions there, Chris. Now, Michael had a question. When it comes to viewability and tracking the success of your ads, when you're in your AAP platform, how can you, or what are the metrics that you're allowed to view?
Yeah, so there's a pretty rich, and actually, if you don't mind here, I'm gonna just go
The
back a few
glossary.
slides. Yeah, a little bit to the glossary, and like I said, this is only a fraction of what you're seeing there. But what the data that Amazon gives you is essentially full funnel. And so one of the things I meant to call out here, because I think it's interesting, is if you look at the right, they'll show things such as add to cart, and so you can actually get a sense of how many people not only viewed your product but added to cart, and then they're waiting to make a purchase. We've done some testing around is if you see those high add to cart numbers, it can create good opportunities for running a sale or running a coupon, because essentially that product is in such high consideration, it's sitting in that person's cart, and they just need a nudge essentially to kind of go over the edge. So you'll get everything from that goes from impressions to clicks to sales, all the way through the funnel, so to see all those things. And then you can evaluate it in a similar way that you would evaluate some of your search campaigns through the same metrics. It just depends on what your goals are. And Brenda called out a really important distinction, is that you're not looking at ACoS, advertising cost of sale, you're getting ROAS, which is essentially the inverse of that. Brenda, anything else you want to add to that?
No, that's a really good point. Another one that I would definitely refer to as well with some of my clients is cumulative reach. Again, just as a reminder, this is the number of unique users the ad is exposed to. So we already know that this particular product has been exposed to at least 2,000 people in order to even attempt or be a part of this campaign. And so looking at those numbers and trying to see, are we exceeding 2,000? That's going to let you know that we're actually reaching more people through retargeting, and to some clients that's deemed a win. So that's another thing to look at as well.
Yeah, that was actually one of the reasons that we were so excited to run some of this retargeting after Prime Day, because you got such an influx of volume and shoppers clicking on detail page and doing product investigation and adding to cart and all those things, that it built up the pool so much of potential shoppers that you could retarget to. And so that's just something to keep in mind from a strategic application.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so now we have another question in regards to retargeting, and I believe you touched on this as well. So we have a question here. Can you retarget, for example, supplements if you're related to a specific health question? And I think that's where retargeting differs on Amazon versus regular e-commerce, right? I think you can only retarget, as you guys mentioned, if somebody views your product detail page or if somebody purchased from you already. Is that correct? What are the requirements for?
I'm trying to understand the question. Is the question essentially can I do keyword searches, or is retargeting?
Exactly. Can they do keyword retargeting on Amazon?
Got it. No, so the retargeting is entirely based off the pool, so the segment of the people who visited the product detail page and then didn't make a purchase. There are segmenting options, so you could include people who made a purchase and continue to remarket to them. This is a little bit different. Or typically what we'll do is exclude those folks, because essentially that demand has already been satisfied. But again, that's one of the things that we'll look at and analyze when making those decisions. Somebody internally made a really great point to me. They said, I'm in the product purchase consideration cycle for a cup of coffee every 12 hours of my life, but only every 4 years for a car. So basically you could market coffee to that person every single day and they're in market for it. But less so for a car. And so vertical, specific product type, category, all those things come into play. But again, short answer to your question, no, it's not on the keywords, it's on who visited the product and didn't purchase.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Hopefully we could clear that up for you, Deborah. So we've been getting a lot of questions. I know budget is, everyone's top concern, and it's always something terrible to hear. So when it comes to AAP, is there a specific fee? Is there like a flat fee just to get on AAP? How do you access it if you don't have it already?
Yeah, good question. And so a couple of things. The way I would think about budget here is as an effective budget, which is to say you could put, let's go back to sponsored products as an analog. You can put $50 in the sponsored products, and even if it performs really well, you're not really moving the needle that much. So from a management standpoint, you have to think about, is it worth it to invest in there if you're not really going to move the needle? So from an effective budget standpoint, we've seen, I'd say at the minimum $7,500, maybe even closer to 10K for a given ASIN for ASIN retargeting. Now, there are certain areas where we've maybe seen 5K move the needle a little bit, or for some advertisers who maybe have smaller budgets and are a little bit more wary and just want to dip their toe in and see, hey, does this thing get me the return I'm looking for? We have seen some of those as well. But from a budget standpoint, you want to think about an effective budget. I don't know particularly if there are minimums if you go Amazon managed. It wouldn't be for me to put words in that team's mouth. I'm sure they would communicate that if you're having conversations on that side. But that effective minimum is what you're seeing. And then the way that budget works too is you have your media spend, and then baked into that is the platform fee and the management fee. So essentially, Amazon has a platform fee. This is for everybody. This is for ESS users. This is for Amazon Managed. Just to use AAP, I mean, think about the tremendous amount of access you're getting and user segmentation detail and demographic data. You're paying for access to that data and then access to that user base. Now, and then there's a management fee that's a part of that as well. But did I answer your question, Alicia?
Yeah, I think you did. And everyone ping me if you didn't already, but it's good to know that there's not really a minimum when it comes to that. So Skylar here chimed in with a question that, I found very interesting. So he's wondering, why even use display advertising? Why use AAP if sometimes Amazon already spends money advertising his or her products? So sometimes they're surfing the web and they see ads pop up all the time that include their product. So the question is, if Amazon is sometimes, advertising your product, why would you consider investing in AAP?
Yeah, so there's one keyword I'll go back to from Skylar's question that really jumped out at me, and that word was sometimes. And so what sometimes indicates is that it's out of his or her or the advertisers or anybody's control. It's you're left to hope that Amazon picks your product and hope that Amazon was bidding on the right term. Let's say if you're talking for like Google AdWords or something like that. And then oftentimes seeing the product in the ad is great, but I would say click on a couple of those ads. I've seen ads where maybe you see a Hydro Flask water bottle in the ad, and then you click on it and it drives back to just Amazon's water bottle pages or outdoor landing page where there's probably 50 or 60 different brands on that page.
Yeah.
So contrast that against a granular level of segmentation and control and frequency caps and budgeting and device targeting and all those different levers that you have control of as an advertiser, and how much that impacts your actual performance and the control of that. To me, that's the clear distinction. But Brenda, I don't know if you want to add any color.
Yeah, I definitely agree with everything Pat just said. In my professional experience, just with my clients that do AAP retargeting campaigns, one of the biggest reasons why clients would want to participate in something like this is they're really looking for additional ways to cast a wider net, but also just to build awareness and volume. As we kind of alluded to throughout the webinar, ASIN retargeting is pretty bottom of the funnel, as bottom of the funnel as you can get. And so it's just a matter of expanding, increasing volume, and it's also just something else to consider, whereas maybe things with AMS or sponsored products may have become a little bit stagnant. What else can we do? How else can we begin to build the business?
Got it. Great. Thank you guys for that. Another question here, does a product have to be brand registered for you to retarget it?
That is a good question. I'm trying to think. I don't believe that having the product brand registered is a
requirement for this.
Is a prerequisite. Yeah, that might be something we'll have to go back and double check to confirm.
Okay.
But
No
I
worries,
don't believe that is a prerequisite for it, especially since it doesn't matter who is the seller at a given time either for that ASIN. So
Yeah.
That's maybe something we follow back up on, but I don't believe that's a requirement.
I don't think it is either.
Okay, great. And then we'll do one final question that's coming in from Janice. So she's wondering if there's a benefit to retargeting one ASIN versus multiple at a time, or when you would do one or the other.
Yeah, that's a really great question. The biggest benefit of just using one ASIN, assuming that that one alone obviously hits the 2,000 session threshold, is you get pretty granular data just for that single ASIN. So for example, if you're using and promoting multiple ASINs, right now, we can't actually differentiate which ASIN is generating the sales, which one is getting the most impressions or views. It's going to be a total number or a total number of sales for both. And we don't get to control which ASIN or which product is actually being promoted in an AAP ad. And so there's a few kind of restraints around the multiple ASINs. I think the biggest benefit in using multiple ASINs is just you're reaching more people. But other than that, the single ASIN has a lot more granularity in regards to metrics and data.
And the reason you can't choose is because that's part of Amazon's programmatic. That's what they're doing, right? It's basically
Correct.
showing, got it.
Yep, exactly.
Okay, got it. And then is there usually a cap on budget per day that you guys usually do, or is it a frequency cap that you usually do?
Yeah, budget per day is a hard question just to answer on the spot. It depends so much on what the overall goals are of the strategy, how many different ASINs, vertical, all those different things. So it's an important question, but I don't want to set an unfair expectation across the board. It's similar to frequency cap. So sometimes we'll default to a limit of 5 per day, but we've seen certain instances where we had to change that as well. So like with most advertising, there is no one size fits all. There is no cookie cutter approach. The real optimizations and the real advantages against competitors is making sure you get all those fine-tuned adjustments right.
Yeah. Okay, so unfortunately, we have run out of time. That about wraps it up. I know that we have a few questions that were left unanswered. Super sorry, tried to get to all of them, but virtually impossible. First, want to give a big thank you to Brenda and Pat for crushing it with the content and that lightning Q&A round. Thank you so much. And a huge thank you to all of our attendees. We appreciate, I know we went over our time, but you did spend an hour with us here, and we really do appreciate it. We know an hour of your time is extremely valuable, and we're really thankful that you chose it to spend it here with us. So I'm going to be signing off from CPC Strategy in San Diego. Bye, everyone.